Hey everybody, Robert here from Blackbeltgaming. I hope you're doing well. I'm just getting over a cold and a bunch of other real-life responsibilities, so sorry for the break here. I couldn't put out another video immediately. We're continuing to read through today, since I'm feeling a bit better, this mystery around this house, and we've had Sherlock Holmes and Watson trying to check out what is going on. Remember in the previous video, a man was threatened, he was told to leave his home, that it was on some ancient burial ground, and he refused. And there was a threatening letter that on this day at this time, there would be dire consequences if he wasn't out. Sherlock Holmes and Watson show up, and Sherlock Holmes ends up confronting an intruder who has already murdered Mr. McReady by strangulation. They get into a big battle in the house, and the intruder ends up fleeing. So now we're going to pick it up today, less of a combat session, and we'll get a bit more into some investigation. So we got a pretty good idea of how combat works in the game, and there was some extra information here about what happens when your stamina, you take damage and it drops you down to different levels of being wounded and severely wounded. But we're going to jump into trying to look for clues here and find out what's going on. So we'll turn to 112. It says that as you investigate in this game, you're going to be writing down certain codes. And along with those codes may be a number. For example, A1 and 32, we can see in the text here. And then later there might be an equation where you need to plug in these values whenever you see the A1 or the A2 or the A3. And if you do that, you're going to flip to the number that matches, the passage that matches that number that you totaled from the equation. And hopefully you're right, and you find out some more information that carries you further into the adventure. So I believe we're ready to start checking rooms. So let's decide where we want to go. Why don't we start in the bedroom? That is where we are now. So we'll go to 76. Upon entering this room, it's not a surprise. Mr. James McReady is dead. And you take a look around and see if there are any special hints. And if you want to see if there's more information, check your deductions. So we're playing Holmes right now. Let's see if there is a 76 in his deductions. And there is. When you examine the body closer, you notice a muddy handprint on the man's throat. It appears strangulation was the cause of death. We knew that. But why were the killer's hands so muddy? So this gives us evidence A1. We note this down. And the value of 53. So we've got our first number. A1 is a 53. It says when we've collected all the clues, we can attempt this equation here. So we need to find some more. Let's check out, why don't we check out the kitchen, see if anything happened. Searching the kitchen, you check the area, and you just find no evidence that he ever stepped foot in here. So a bit of a dead end there. How about the living room? Why don't we go to the living room? Checking in the living room, you find a drawer with 3 letters inside. You recognize one of them as that threatening letter that we read before, saying that if he didn't get out of there by midnight on today's date, then something terrible was going to happen to him, Mr. McReady, and it did. The second is a utility bill for a plumber who recently fixed a burst pipe in the cellar. And the third is a letter from McReady's sister inviting him to come and visit her home in Ireland. So is there anything else? Let's check the deductions here. 237. There is 237. Written on the bill, it says Harmon's Plumbing. Given that the plumbing work was in the cellar and was only done recently, it makes you wonder if it could have significance. So this is A3 with a value of 19. All right, so it's time to check out the cellar. Let's, I think I clicked something wrong there. Let's check out the cellar, 169. Grabbing the lamp from the house, you decide to descend into the cellar. The room is relatively empty except for a few boxes containing junk, some shelves with tools on it, and in the corner you notice a pair of muddy boots. So I think let's check that further. 169. Yes, 169. Looking at the boots more closely, you notice that the mud looks wet and fresh. Following a hunch, you take one of them upstairs and compare it to the shoe of Mr. McReady, and you find that it does not match. So this had to be the boots of the intruder. So we've got A2 with a value of 3. I think we're ready to try this equation. So here's what we need to plug in. We've got A1, a value of 53, plus 17. So you can pull out a calculator here and do this. Plus times the value of A2, which was 3, plus 100, minus A3, which was 19. Following that formula and plugging in the clues that we found, we come to a result of 291. So we need to jump to passage 291 to get the best conclusion. All right, we've compiled the evidence together and we realized that it's not quite all there. So Sherlock Holmes goes back down into the cellar, feels around on the floor. One of the stone slabs down there in the cellar is a bit loose, and you lift it up and you find a tunnel. So let's jump into this tunnel here. I wonder where this leads. And you're starting to think about how this may have occurred. So the murderer passed himself off as a plumber to gain access to the cellar where he started to dig a tunnel, but you don't know where it leads. At around midnight, the murderer must have used this tunnel to enter the house and took his boots off to avoid leaving muddy footprints to the crime scene, and probably had a couple of options to leave. Probably planned to leave the way he came in, but we interrupted him and caused him a bit of trouble, so he could either go back the way he came in and reveal his secret tunnel, or he could do what he did do, which is try to flee and run out of the house after we got into the fight with him. So that's what we think happened. We're now going to travel through this tunnel. It's a tight fit. It's muddy. We're crawling through, and several minutes later, we emerge into a dark room. You light a match, and you realize that you are in a shed. And there's nothing really of interest in the shed, so you decide to exit it. And you find out you're in the garden of a big mansion. And maybe the owner can give you some answers. So it's late, you knock on the door. There's a man in his 60s who opens the door, and he's pretty mad that you've disturbed him so late at night. You introduce yourself as Sherlock Holmes, you investigating a murder. And the guy is shocked, and he says, yes, this is your neighbor, Mr. McReady's been murdered. And he says, that's terrible. Sherlock Holmes says, it absolutely is. I found a tunnel coming out of your shed. Do you know anything about this? And this man's name is Seth Pecksniff. And he says, I don't know anything about that. And Sherlock Holmes says, is there anyone else in the house who may know? And you hear some girls' voices. One of them's name is Charity, and the other one's name is Mercy. And his two daughters are saying, is everything okay? And he just says that they're the only ones in the house right now. And Sherlock Holmes asks, has anyone visited recently? And he says, no, but we did have someone work to help with a damp, I guess, moisture problem maybe in the shed. And do you remember the name of the man who did the work? And he doesn't remember, but he says, I remember the name of the company. It was called Harmon's Plumbing. They were recommended to me by my daughter's fiance, Jonas. He knows them through his construction company, Chuzzlewit and Son. So you thank Pecksniff for his information, and now return to the crime scene to catch up with Watson. So now we continue, and we get to switch over to Dr. John Watson. He had been waiting for Holmes to return that night, and eventually talked with him about what Sherlock Holmes had discovered about the muddy tunnel and the passage to the shed that was on the property of this mansion of Seth Pecksniff. And although Pecksniff did not know of the tunnel, he believed it had been dug by someone working for Harmon Plumbing. And this is the same plumbing company that had been responsible for the maintenance work in McReady's cellar. So later that morning, the two of them returned to Baker Street and began some hours of intense research. And let's see, they came to the conclusion that our next stop should be the offices of the construction company Chuzzlewit and Son. The company had not only recommended Harmon Plumbing to Mr. Pecksniff, but we also learned from reading Holmes' extensive archive, he actually owned them too. So I guess we're saying here that Chuzzlewit and Son owned Harmon Plumbing, if I'm reading that correctly. It was during this time that Holmes came across a job vacancy printed in today's paper. It didn't require any experience, and so Holmes decided to put on a disguise and apply for the job and go undercover and see what he could find out. So Dr. Holmes asked, what do you want me to do while you're doing that? And he says, I'm going to need some help breaking and entering to check some things out later. So I want you to find Jack Dawkins. And evidently, Dr. Watson here knows Jack Dawson. And he said, I thought for a moment I had a patient by that name, but his name was Dawson, not Dawkins. So maybe there's not a connection. Well, thank you for sharing. You'll find him in East District in a suburb called Saffron Hill. Here's a picture, and it's a portrait, and I believe you'll know him when you find him. So we're going to switch over now to 361. We are now officially playing the role of Watson. Watson has some abilities we're discovering in this tutorial. He might be able to help people with injuries. He has, of course, a medical background. You are, however, to do this, going to need certain equipment or things in your inventory in order to properly help people, and you'll have to note them off on your adventure sheet when you use them. Dr. Watson doesn't have Holmes' deductions, but he has intuitions which work in a similar manner. So from time to time, we might be checking those to see if those give us any additional information as we play through the adventure. So after leaving Baker Street, you hail a cab and make your way to the Saffron Hill East District. A short while before your expected arrival, the cabbie stops abruptly, telling you that you will have to walk the rest of the way. Saffron Hill is notorious for pickpockets and cutthroats, and so you leave the cab and start walking towards your destination. And a little while into your journey, you see a thin man standing in a doorway, shouting frantically. He said, "Help, I need a doctor. Does anyone know where I can find a doctor?" All right, so this could be a trick. I'm not sure if this is 361. Let's just Let's just take a look. No, nothing is matching up here, so there's no additional insight. Why don't we go and help the man? Let's go to 882. It says, I'm a doctor. How can I help? It's my son. He took a tumble down the steps and he may have broken something. Would you come inside and have a look? Of course. You follow the man inside, where you see a wife and 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, standing around a 4th younger boy who lies on a table crying. Who is this, Bob? The wife asks. It's all right. He's a doctor. He's come to have a look at Tim. Approaching the table, you now get a better look at the patient. The boy's leg is fractured, and he appears to be suffering from fatigue. So what happened here? Well, Bob had just come in from work. I was preparing tea, and I called up to Tim to come downstairs, and a few moments later, I heard a loud thud and heard Tim cry. That's when we found him at the bottom of the stairs. Please say you can help him. I can't stand to see him in pain. To heal the boy, you will require the following: 1 fatigue, 1 splint, 1 bandage. So I took a picture of the adventure sheet. We do seem to have these components in what's called treatment components section. There is 1 fatigue. I'm kind of interested in what that is, actually. A splint, there's 1 splint. And bandage, there is 1 bandage. So we do have all of these items. So if you have these and wish to help the boy, mark them off and go to 714. So after fixing up the boy's leg and giving him something for the pain, he seems much better. Thank you ever so much, says the man. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't run into you. I'm glad I could help, Mr. Cratchit, Bob Cratchit. I think we're having a bit of a story crossover here from A Christmas Carol. Like I said, I'm really glad I could help you, Mr. Cratchit, but this is only a temporary fix. I would suggest taking the boy to the hospital. It is possible he may need further medical care. Now, I'm sorry, but I must be on my way. Oh, stay for dinner, please. We owe you something for your trouble. Thank you for the offer, but I must decline. I have urgent business to take care of in town. Well, take this to take on your journey. And she hands me a pie. Oh, madam, I really couldn't. Nonsense. It's the least I can do. So we are supposed to add COE 23. That must be crossover event 23. Add a pie to your inventory. This pie, when eaten, will give you +5 stamina. All right, so we've added crossover event 23, and it's now time to leave and continue to 245. Further on into your journey, you come across a man lying in the middle of the street. He's a small, portly fellow wearing a tattered suit and a top hat. Your first thought is that he may be drunk or passed out, but there's also the possibility that he could be wounded or worse, dead. Well, we can continue or we can investigate. Let's investigate. 984. Upon reaching the man, you see that he has a nasty stab wound on the left side of his abdomen. Checking for signs of life, you find that he's still breathing, but perhaps not for long if you don't do something about his wound. Uh-oh. 984. Do we have anything? No, not really. Alcohol, bandage, and a thread. I know we have the alcohol and the thread, but I don't think we have any more bandages. Uh-oh. So I don't think we can help him here. Oh no. If you have these items and wish to use them, if not, continue. This is too bad. We can't help. Oh no, I guess we just left this guy behind. You finally come to Saffron Hill and begin to show the picture around that Holmes had given you, and as luck would have it, Mr. Dawkins seems to be quite well known around these parts, and more than a few people are happy enough to point you towards some of his haunts. It is, whilst exploring one of these, a busy marketplace that you hear someone shout, "Get back here! No one steals from me and gets away with it!" Then you see a young, cheeky-looking boy emerge from the crowd, followed by two stocky, angry-faced men. Looking at the picture, you realize the resemblance is uncanny. The boy runs past you. You quickly grab a hold of him and pull him to the side. Now close up, you see the dirty, snub-nosed, flat-browed, common-faced boy of 15 with all the airs and manners of a man. All right, so Dr. Watson grabs hold of him, and the young man says, "What do you think you're doing?" He says in the common tongue, These people are after me." "Jack Dawkins, you ask?" "Might be. Depends on who's asking." "My name is Dr. John Watson. I'm here on behalf of Sherlock Holmes. He needs your help with a small matter." "Unhand the boy," says a voice. "You can have him once we're done." You turn and see the men who were chasing him standing behind you. "First, tell me what the boy has done to warrant this kind of pursuit." Two young men against a young boy hardly seems fair. "He stole something precious from me, an old family heirloom worth 5 shillings. "Is that what this is about, money?" "That's right, and if he don't pay it back, we're going to take it in blood." So we have some choices here. We can try to convince the boy to pay back what he's stolen. If you choose to pay on his behalf, it's here. If you choose to fight them, here. Well, let's try to convince the boy to give back what he stole. "Jack, I think you should give these men back their money." "What?" the boy says in shock. "You can't ask me to do that. The man I work for, he won't be happy if I return empty-handed. Besides, this man has nothing to do with you." "I'm just giving you some friendly advice. I've met people like this before, and if you don't pay them now, they'll continue coming after you until you do." All right, was able to edit out my coughing fit. "And as for returning empty-handed, I'm sure Mr. Holmes will be happy to compensate you for whatever you do for him." "Fine," Jack says as he hands the man 5 shillings. "Now, I trust this settles the matter," you say to the men. "It will suffice," one of them says before he turns to Jack. "But if I ever catch you stealing from us again, I'll chop your bloody hands off." After this, they leave. "Thanks for that," Jack says. "You're quite welcome. I'm being sarcastic. You better be right about Mr. Holmes paying me, because if he doesn't, I'm robbing you the first opportunity I get." So Dodger loses 5 shillings from his character sheet. So now it looks like the 3 characters are together, Mr. Dawkins, and they're outside the main offices at Chuzzlewit & Son. "Glad to see you. Glad you agreed to come, Dodger," Holmes says. "What has Watson told you?" "Something about this guy got murdered in the house, and he has something to do with a business called Chestnut & Son." And someone corrects him, says Chuzzlewit & Son. "Yeah, that's what I said. He also mentioned something about you going in there in a disguise to attend an interview." And Holmes said, "I did that this afternoon. I did not learn as much as I had hoped, but I did meet the owner of the company. His name is Jonas Chuzzlewit, and I believe he may be our villain. He originally ran the company with his father, the recently deceased Anthony Chuzzlewit, and from the way he spoke about the man, I could tell there was no love lost there, and it wouldn't surprise me if Jonas had a hand in his death too. At the moment, though, it's just a theory. I'm hoping that a full exploration of his office may reveal the evidence we need to convict him." So for this caper, Holmes had brought along 2 oil lamps for us to use once we were inside. The trouble was getting inside in the first place. We were not, let's see, were it not for the fact that the front door had a particularly complicated lock, Holmes probably would have used his own lockpicking skills to get us in, but now it was up to the talents of the artful Dodger. Unfortunately, not even his famed skills could get us through that door. But being as young and as athletic as he was more than happy to try and get inside via the roof and then open the door for us from the other side. Having witnessed firsthand the skill set of the young burglar that I picked up in Saffron Hill, I was fairly confident he was up for the task at hand. The thing I wasn't sure about was whether he could completely be trusted. All right, everybody, I guess I should stop here. We're going to be switching over to Dodger next and seeing what he can do with his skill set. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the adventure so far. Please join us next time as I'm going to push forward a little bit more into this sample adventure. Remember to check these out. Tales Foretold, a compilation of sample adventures from the game books of Joseph Daniels. I'll catch you later.